Figured Christmas was as good a time as any to talk about Die Hard, one of the best Christmas movies, one of the best action movies, and just a really fun movie overall with a lot of rewatchability. And there's a reason it's still talked about almost 40 years later. There's been a million people who've done super in-depth analysis, so I mainly just want to talk about the stuff that I like and what I think makes it memorable and so long-lasting, and kind of why it's frustrating that we don't get more action movies that at least approach this quality. And I want to talk about a couple of things that I think just get overlooked because people like the movie so much that they kind of let a couple of things slide. I think the biggest reason that the movie is so memorable and that it still gets the attention and love that it does is primarily because it was sort of a turning point for movies where your protagonist actually got beat up and they just sort of seemed like a normal guy. This wasn't like your Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone killing a bajillion fucking guys and never really getting hurt, kind of just seeming invincible. And obviously John McClane, right away we see he's got his own personal issues with him and his wife. He's got a fear of flying, and he's just kind of in a bad spot as a normal guy. I mean, he's a cop. He's not an elite special forces commando or a super duper special program trained Navy SEAL or whatever the fuck. He's just a dude in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or the right place at the right time, I guess, depending on how you look at it. Obviously, he gets beat to shit throughout the whole movie. You got his nice, clean white wife beater to start, and by the end, he takes it off. It's completely brown. He ends up shirtless and all cut up and limping. Just simple things like that a lot of action movies don't do anymore, or just in general. I think is maybe the biggest reason it stuck around so long in the way that it has and has such staying power. He's got a very obvious characterization really early on, and that characterization and how distinct he is and you know who he is also lets you get attached to him very quickly. This is something that I think a lot of action things struggle with because their character ends up kind of being just this one note, I'm a badass type guy, and they don't really do much with them. And that can be fun, but there's a reason that a movie like John Wick 1, I think, is far superior to the rest of them. Because John Wick 1 is a simple revenge story about a guy who lost his wife and dog and memories of her, as opposed to 2 through 4 where they do all this crazy world building and he's just a killing robot. Die Hard has the same type of thing where you got a normal guy who's a cop trying to salvage his marriage and he needs to win to get his wife back or at least have a chance to talk to her. And then you compare that to Die Hard 4 and 5 where he's essentially a superhero riding on jets and shit. And you can see the drop off within the series itself because I think it forgot its identity. Besides the great performances, the obvious fact of Hans Gruber being such a great bad guy, Alan Rickman always being great, but just having smart antagonists or villains makes everything much higher stakes and much more intense. Some of the best interactions throughout the movie are their conversations over the walkie-talkie, and they're both trying to pry information out of each other in this cat and mouse game. And one of my favorite parts is when John McClane runs into Hans up on the roof and Hans immediately devolves into an American accent and pretends to be panicking like he happened to be an escaped hostage. And John McClane gives him a gun, but it's empty because he figured out that most likely it wasn't a hostage. I love that kind of stuff all throughout the movie. You get the bad guys looking for noises, using the elevator floors to find out where he is, poking the vents to see where he's inside at. Just a lot of really smart little things that someone might think of on the spot throughout the movie that make it feel very real, and like decently clever cops and robbers might have these interactions in the real world. You obviously get the fact that Hans will just kill people once they're useless, with no hesitation. This is done throughout the movie, and he's not like a deranged lunatic. He's just very calculated and doing what's necessary as he goes, which I think is a really nice balance to not have some completely deranged psycho who just enjoys killing people, or someone who's dumb and does like the James Bond monologuing where they keep letting people escape or the protagonist gets away over and over. The movie is really smart here where at first he's just trying to contain him because their goal isn't to kill people and take hostages. Their goal is the money. And then once he breaks containment, he gets pissed off and he's like, find that fucking guy and kill him. And another smart thing that we see is John McClane throughout the movie has a rough count of the bad guys. And then as he's killing them, he's just slowly counting them down and also communicating that with the police outside. So they know how many people are left. He knows how many people are left. It gives you a very clear assessment of the kind of damage he's done to their mission, along with how many people left does he need to take care of to get to his goal of saving the hostages, saving his wife, and reconnecting with her. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about sounds really simple, it doesn't feel like there's been very many action movies since then who've managed to use all these kind of techniques effectively throughout the movie. Even just the simple aspect of Hans and John McClane being able to talk to each other, and you don't have to have one of them be an idiot to escape or anything like that, where one gets away. They're just constantly at each other and constantly interacting. They reserve that kind of thing for much closer to the end of the movie. At that point, it makes a lot more sense because everyone's trying to get this over with. Hans to get the money, John to save the people, get rid of the terrorists or robbers. I think something else that contributes is that a lot of the dialogue feels natural. If you watch YouTube movie reviews, which if you're still here, you probably do since you're watching this, you've probably heard people use the phrase, oh, that's a trailer line. Like where someone says a line that's very deliberate because they want to use it in the trailer. And in the movie, it makes no sense or feels really unnatural. Kraven the Hunter, great example of this recently, where he says, I'm Kraven the Hunter, and does like the big dramatic pause and shit. And the movie just goes on like he wasn't being over dramatic. Obviously, you have the famous lines about now he knows what a TV dinner feels like, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. You know, all that stuff doesn't feel like they were trying to make some slogan for John McClane. He just kind of said those things out of frustration or in response to Hans, who's calling him a cowboy. So they feel very natural and then end up just catching on as an actual thing that people just like, not this sort of intended catchphrase slogan that feels really out of place. And like, why would you say that in that moment? So yeah, overall, obviously a great movie, really simple concept, just really well executed. And within this simple concept are just a lot of little clever details and good character moments, including from the side characters. Obviously, you have the stuff with Powell where he gets his little redemption arc. You have the stuff with Argyle where he's kind of a goofball for most of the movie, but then comes in handy when he's needed. The wife Holly has her good moments, stepping up for her people when she needs to. The guy Ellis is a really good scumbag, and you kind of feel like he gets what's coming to him. I mean, these are all the obvious reasons that it's one of the classics, and hopefully won't be remade anytime soon. We can all just pretend that 4 and 5 never happened, and it's just a trilogy, and hang on to it, like Lord of the Rings, which hopefully also never gets remade in my lifetime. I do think there are some plot armor scenes that people overlook just because they like the movie so much. The most obvious one being when he jumps off the roof with the fire hose, and the anchor piece comes out, but still somehow stays on the roof to hold him in place. I think him being able to grab onto the vent is questionable, but if you assume he's really strong, at least you can kind of let that one slide. And then the scene where the guy's on top of the table chasing him, and he's under the table, and the guy on top has a machine gun, and he's just shooting one shot randomly. And then eventually John stops, and the guy's like, nowhere for you to go now. And John just unloads a whole clip up through the table and kills the guy. When if the guy had just unloaded straight down, John would be dead. Nothing that's a really huge deal or ruins the movie, obviously. But I feel like if it was a shittier movie or a less beloved movie, more people would call that shit out. And instead, I feel like you hear a lot of rationalizing or kind of just ignoring because people like the movie so much. But anyway, it's a great movie and it's Christmas, so I'm not going to go crazy negative and try to tear it down. I just wanted to point that shit out. I'm going to leave it here for this one. If you haven't seen Die Hard, it's one of the best Christmas movies. Personally, I'd still probably watch Nightmare Before Christmas first, just because it's one of my favorite movies ever. But I think Die Hard's a good choice for a lot of people, especially if you're not into the Hallmark cheesy stuff, or maybe some of the comedy that hasn't aged as well, like Christmas Vacation or A Christmas Story, which might feel a little bit dated now. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there for this one. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. Try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults. Merry Christmas. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers. Thanks. See ya.